Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome all of you to our panel discussion. Today is WIN's final event in its campaign for International Women's Day, the social media campaign. And I'd like to welcome all of you for tuning in, and those who will watch later on once this is recorded. And a big thank you to all our panelists who are here with us today. So let me first tell you a bit about the International Women's Day campaign. The theme this year was Choose to Challenge. And at Women in Need, we decided to choose to challenge the gender biases because we believe that gender biases are the root cause for gender inequalities and gender discrimination, which leads to all forms of gender-based violence in Sri Lanka and the world over. So let me first introduce you to our panel. And I must tell you that all our panelists are very passionate advocates of women's rights, human rights, and are very specialized and experts in their own fields. And I appreciate you all being here. First, I'd like to introduce you to Savithri Wijesekera, who I very fondly call Auntie Savi. She is the Executive Director of Women in Need and an attorney at law, and is known nationally as being an advocate for women's rights and for protecting women's and girls' rights. And she has also been a member of the National Police Commission the last few years. And she has been on a number of committees and panels and commissions with different governments advocating for women's rights. Then we have with us Ms. Peshali Fernando. Peshi, as I call her, is a licensed mental health clinician educated in the USA with work experience in the US and in Sri Lanka, with over 20 years experience in the field of psychology and emotional and behavioral mental health. And she is currently the group consultant psychologist at Brandix, which is a leading apparel manufacturer, and she looks into the mental wellness of all their employees. We have Dr. Ramani Jayasundera. Ramani is an attorney at law and the director of Justice and Gender Programs at the Asia Foundation. She has over 23 years experience in programming in the justice sector and women's empowerment. She has been a very strong advocate for women's rights, working with policymakers as well as the community, and a strong advocate of women in need and a supporter as well. And then we have Laila Gunasekera Martenstyn. Laila is one of the only two women leaders in the Sri Lankan advertising field and has made a mark there. And she is passionately opposed to domestic violence. She has supported women in need in lots of its campaigns. And we are so glad to have all of you here today. And I would like to say at the outset that this is not a formal, discussion. It's a very friendly chat where we can discuss and give opinions about lots of things that have been happening. And actually, in the last few years, we've heard of different statements, certain incidents which have caused concern as women's rights activists and women. So we would like to just have a chat about the different issues and how we can challenge gender biases to progress as a country in all fields. So I would first like all my panelists to make their purpose statement, and Savi, I'd like you to start.
Sorry, Mariam, can I just say one thing before I have a little riot?
Yes.
I am not one of only two leaders in advertising. There are many female leaders. I am one of the two leaders who came from a creative background. That's all.
Okay, there we go. Thanks,
Laila. So a purpose statement, some kind of statement I would like to make is trying to control someone or someone's life is an abuse of its own. Women in Need has given opportunities and showcased their strength and abilities to bring women to the table where we discuss issues of gender-based violence. So today my energy is channeled towards supporting and influencing all women to be empowered to stand against gender biases, discriminatory practices, and together we can show our strength and fight for gender equality. So we hear, apart from my statement, recently there was a very strong statement made uh, by Rape, saying women's rights are accepted, but we have to consider the domestic compulsions. Now, I really don't know what these domestic compulsions mean in a scenario of women's rights. When we think of the abuse and trauma and discriminatory practices inflicted on women, there is no domestic compulsion because they are not protected. Their right to live is violated and abused. So, is it to say that a woman who has been subject to abusive relationship for physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, do you still wait at home because it's your domestic duty to just carry on? So we need to question that, because as far as I know, 30 years of working with the women who have been subject to violence, they only come when it's not bearable. Nobody has ever come the first they're beaten or first time they are abused. They have come minimum 5 years of abuse. So I don't know what domestic compulsion is. Going into the 21st century, are we still talking about domestic compulsion when there is a blatant violation of rights here? Right to live, actually. I would say it's right to live. So only thing these women ask is protection and security. So if these gender biases and discriminatory practices are harmful to a woman's life, I think we should seriously think what gender biases are and what domestic compulsions are.
Thank you, Antisabi. Peshi, your statement, please. Peshi, unmute your mic, please.
Thank you. Let me just start off saying that my first exposure to domestic violence or such was actually in 1995 when I joined a group of Asian Indian women in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I just wanted to go do some community service. And that's when I realized the gravity of domestic violence and how it cuts across all socio-economic levels. So since then, I saw women being empowered. I saw women really with the correct support being able to be empowered. So since then, I have been really able to focus on this. But if I go a bit more seriously into a purpose statement, I want to start off saying combating gender violence is a Herculean task. And I admire all these women and men who are supportive of us to do that. And the process needs collaboration to gain insight into why these prejudices are there, why these biases exist. And in addition to that, we also need to know the psychosocial impact that this domestic violence, gender biases have mainly on women, right? The statistics are really alarming. The latest UN statistics, if I read, says cases of DV during COVID-19 lockdown have increased 20%. Before COVID-19 strain was on, 35% women worldwide had experienced some form of violence. And due to fear, as many as over 60% never reported. And we know that this is true even in Sri Lanka, right? But on top of that, I want to say mental health distress, mental illness, including self-harm, suicide ideation attempts are alarming in Sri Lanka. And part of it is to do with, it's not everything is to do with biases, but there's a large part that gets unnoticed, right? So therefore, I think I am very excited to be a part of it, really also to learn from all the expertise in the panel, because we must come together and do this. And these become very, very instrumental because we do challenge the unspoken biases, right? To get a deeper understanding of why that is there. And as we know, it's an immense challenge, right? And I also hope that today's discussion will help us look within ourselves, right? Because we have to be our own change agents, right? We will see our part, cultivate knowledge, cultivate the voice, right? And we must encourage others to be able to come and be empowered and voice these concerns. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Peshi. Ramani, your statement, please.
Thanks, Mariam. I'd like to make a statement from the perspective of the justice sector, which I'm most familiar with. And start by saying, you look at freedom from gender bias as a right that women have. And to look at gender bias as discriminatory, as violating women, but also in a lesser degree, if there can be a lesser degree, that prevents women from achieving their full potential. So it might not be overtly discriminatory or violent, but it still prevents women from achieving their full potential. So when you look at the justice sector and how the justice sector operates in Sri Lanka, starting from the courts, the lawyers, and the legal practice, we see the full potential that the justice sector has, one, for perpetuating bias. I mean, the justice sector has the full force to perpetuate gender biases and mostly discriminatory biases against women. But then also very positively, the force of the justice sector in preventing and redressing gender bias with the approaches, with practices, and of course by judgments. And for me, it's a constant search of how we effectively use the justice system to make a difference in challenging gender biases and preventing discrimination against women, and also contributing to women's equality and empowerment. So when you look at the justice sector and all the work we've done on justice sector approaches, looking at judgments, looking at practices, and also perceptions and attitudes in justice sector professionals, you would see several things that are very intricately impacting on gender biases, the creation of, the perpetuation, and also redress it. So one of the big arguments is about neutrality and impartiality. In our work, looking at, our work with WIN, looking at sensitizing the justice sector to issues of gender-based violence, not just of discrimination, but very particularly of overt gender-based violence, you constantly find this argument of neutrality and impartiality. Like, does sensitivity impinge on the justice sector's neutrality and impartiality in addressing a case or a dispute or any actual happening? So this is a conversation that has to be had over and over again, where it's very easy to show that being neutral and impartial has nothing to do with sensitivity. It's about sensitivity to the victim and not partiality to the issue. A judge can be very sensitive to a victim, but still be very impartial in looking at an incident. So we need to further this conversation a lot, and that is one of my purposes. The other thing, I think Savi already brought that up, looking at this whole justification of gender bias, be it culture, be it judgmental attitudes, be it couched in all kinds of right place, the right voice, all kinds of arguments, and how this affects a lack of access to justice for women and justice for women. So that's my purpose. And as Savi said, I think Savi, it's a lifelong endeavor, but we will continue to keep at it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramani. And Laila, it's your turn. Laila, please unmute your mic. It's on mute.
Sorry. Okay, here I am. All right. So I think, when any of us get onto a panel like this, it is with an earnest endeavor that something positive will come out of it. But sadly, it doesn't always happen. And we end up, airing our views and passionately, whatever. But I mean, especially after working with Savi and Mariam so many times, I'm always despondent that after all the fantastic work that they do, it's only a baby step forward and then we regress again. It's frustrating, but that doesn't mean we stop, right? It means we should actually get a little more passionate. And I have seen such a lot of gender-based violence in front of, actually, I'll just quickly share with you, not even 2 weeks ago, my domestic maid, who I know very well, was at home. Her husband came to see her, and they had an argument, and in front of me, he just thrashed her. Right? So my son was there, and he kicked him out of the house. So, but what does the maid do? She comes to me and said, "Why did you do that to him? In our part of the world, this is nothing wrong." And she resigns and leaves. So it was like, what? No, we are trying to support you. This is what happens. So it's something you're used to all the time. But I'm thinking fairly simplistic in terms of a statement of purpose. I would like to imagine that if we can sort of help to facilitate taking some sort of preventive measures against discrimination and harassment by maybe establishment of a tribune or a council or something that you can get, people of passion in there, where they can actually ensure swift action and procedures with mostly no repercussion to the victim. Right? Because that is something that happens all the time, right? I mean, Savi, I know you see it all the time, right? And even in gender-based, it's like your fault. You were wearing that short skirt. You deserved, I mean, what rubbish is that, right? So I'm looking to see if we can form some kind of a council that can really act on their behalf without repercussion, without judgment, without bias. There's bias in that itself. So that's kind of my very short statement of purpose.
Thank you, Laila. Thank you very much. So taking all these statements into consideration, I'd like to go back to Savi, where she mentioned this particular statement that was made at the UN. I just try to read out the concerning bit of it, where it was stated that while it is useful to share the experiences among the international community on the obstacles faced by women and the prescriptions needed to alleviate from such setbacks, we must be sensitive to the diverse situations and circumstances in which the proposed program and strategies have been implemented. The role of women in society is different in varied cultures, and as such, a one-size-fits-all policy cannot be applied in the pursuance of their rights. It is imperative for policies in this regard to be formulated in tandem with domestic compulsions and requirements. And for me, this seems like a justification for the discrimination and the violence that Sri Lankan women undergo. I would like your comments on this and to see how best, I mean, if this is what we make, if this is the statement and the approach that we take at such, as a state, how do we deal with the repercussions of it, and what has caused this kind of statement? How does anyone justify violence depending on the cultural or whatever the compulsions, the so-called compulsions? Savi, would you like to comment? Unmute your mic. Savi, please. You're on mute. Savi, can you please unmute?
I think you can unmute her, Mariam. It's at the bottom, Savi.
Right, okay. Firstly, I was very confused what they meant by domestic compulsion. Laila, I don't understand, Ramani, what domestic compulsion means in context of women's rights.
Yes.
Because what do they mean? What is the state trying to? What is the message that they're trying to give? Is it that Sri Lankan cultural practices sometimes maybe not in an enabling environment for women's rights? I don't know. Because
I also can't answer that. I think it's what you're saying is a possibility, right? I don't have 100% answer on that. Maybe.
Yeah. So we need to find out. We're trying to find out. because for the 30 years that I have worked, we have made small changes. There are lots of positives. There is a little better sensitivity when you go to a police station. Not everybody, but there is a change. There is attitudinal change. There are small little battles that we have won, and there are people who are sensitive and listening and empathetic and trying to help. Like we had the other day a client of ours last week who was beaten very badly. She had walked out of the house. He had kept her locked up. When he went for an interview or something, she had walked out and walked in the police station. It was evening. There was nowhere she could go. This is out of Colombo. So the OIC of the police station gave her the bus fare to come to Colombo to come to our office. And now she's with us. She's in protective custody with us. She's safe. So, but there are people like that to help, and who her life was in danger. She was might have been even killed. She couldn't get out of the house. She was locked into the house. There's severe forms of physical and sexual abuse. So she's safe now. So now we have come to that level. We have some protection mechanism. She has a safe place to stay. She is safe. We are counseling her. Maybe we'll have to do the next step of getting a protection order, empowering her, sending her back to society someday in a few months. But when statements like these are made, it worries you. Have we for the 30 years, what have we argued upon, what have we fought upon? And we can see when governments have positive attitudes, the Ministry of Women's Affairs and Women and Child Affairs, Justice Ministry, they are making changes. But then this statement, it's very confusing. But we need people to understand that whatever the women do, it is within this cultural acceptance norm. They won't walk out of a marriage that easily. They will never walk out. They will think and think and think. It is unless their life is in danger, they will carry on. So people need to understand this, that there is a lot of element of danger to their life, and because they don't have that protection and security, only they're walking out. And no other reason.
Peshi, I would thanks, Anisavi. Peshi, now I know that
Laila is talking.
Sorry. No, it's okay. I was just adding on to that, Savi, and from the times that I have met you and we have talked, that it is also not that they don't want to do it. It is that they have at all. Not from their own family, not from their society. They have I have spoken to so many women, and you sometimes think, why are you staying within this place? They have nobody to help unless they come to you. There is the whole system and the whole culture has to change because their parents won't take them back. So it's a tragedy. Honestly, it really is. So, and okay, I have to say something here. I was thinking about this yesterday, and the tragedy is a lot of gender bias. Actually, if the root cause can be a woman, isn't it? Right? Because it's the mother, right? It is this well-meaning mother who puts her male child on this proverbial murunga. So from day one, he feels entitled, right? And the girl child, I mean, if you have two children in most middle-class families, they're both clever. Possibly the girl is cleverer, right? You'll find all the money to send the boy to the university. So it happens from the beginning. There's a huge entire change that has to happen from the home itself. It's a tragedy, really.
That's quite right, Laila, because and it happens in all parts of society. It's not just from the rural communities. The upper middle, all of them. They have the patriarchy where you want to protect your girl and your girl has to be given in marriage, whereas the boy should go study, should be exposed. So that's why I want to speak to Peshi. So there is this concept where we are trained to think over thousands of years. We are told that the man is a leader. okay, or leader is a man. He is the breadwinner. He will provide for you. He will take care of you. Your role is such and such. So when there is a woman who's, who comes out strong as a leader, even women tend to look at you differently. You judge her. You think, okay, she's vociferous. She's not a lady. And I'm sure many women here who are in the panel would also, have been judged as such. So, Peshi, how do you? Is it true that is it psychologically, are we trained to think that, and how do we break away from it? You're mute, Peshi.
It happens again.
Peshi, unmute again. I think it gets double clicked.
Okay,
Should be
right.
fine.
Okay, so I think what happens, first I want to go back to briefly what Laila said. And I think what happens is I believe that women create some of this within the household, right? Women, the mothers-in-law, and I think there are wonderful mothers-in-law, right? But I think it is this creation of the woman cannot get beyond yourself, right? So that kind of is a basis, and kids who grow up within the household learn from it. So if you psychologically look at it, there are learning theories. Behaviorists will say it's a learned mechanism. Okay, you are modeled that, you've been listening to it, you see it in media, and you learn by observing, by modeling, right? So that is true. So that is one part of it, right? But behaviors are unlearned. Okay, but every behavior you learn is also not needed to be followed. And if you have a mental capacity, right, that can prevent you from not following, you don't need to follow everything you see and hear. So I think the learning has to come to empower and make your mental capacity stronger, where even if you hear these or see these, that behavior doesn't have to be copied again, right? Now I have to say, when I was working in the San Francisco Bay Area, there was a Sri Lankan woman who had 3 children, right? And I worked with a group called Maitri, um, and the parents here did not want her back. She didn't have any means, no money, nothing. She had 3 children, one with special abilities, right? So when I called here, they said, we are very sorry, we have others to be married and we can't have her back. She went from shelter to shelter, right? And I mean, I'm not sure what happened now, but fortunately, in San Francisco, we have long-term shelters. So you can go there, unlike what we talked about here. You can leave a marriage. You can, if you decide to. Again, if you come to a psychologist, we are not going to tell them you have to leave or not leave. What we will do is empower them to think about the social biases, about the things that they see and hear, and construct, right, their rethinking of what they can do, right? But here we don't have that. So even if a woman becomes mentally stronger because of the consequences, and she decides, I want to walk, there is no support. They can't go to a shelter and learn maybe a skill or anything, maybe to even finance herself, right? Then she has to go back. That's worse. So people that I come across say, I don't want to even walk out, because then I go back, I would get beaten more, right? So there's a layer and layer of this. And I think, Savi, knowing you and what all of you are saying that WIN does, I think even if it is a baby step, it is huge, because it's a long journey. So so I think we continue the work we do.
Thanks, Peshi. So another incident that occurred a few weeks ago, actually, I spoke to Ramani about this earlier, was the arrest of 4 girls, I think, who were walking the streets in Colombo at night. And I hear that there were 2 of them who were waiting for their private vehicles, but they were arrested under the Vagrancy Ordinance. And the Fort Magistrate had fined them 50 rupees each, saying that they should not be, it's called Ayaleyanama. So they should not be, walking the streets without a purpose. And incidentally, during our campaign on International Women's Day, there was this comment that was made by a social media user, where he said රෑ යන්නේ මොකටද කියලා අපි දන්නවා රෑ යන්නේ මොකටද කෙල්ලෝ ගෑනු වෙන වැඩ නැද්ද අනාරක්ෂිත දේවල් නෙවෙයි ඒ අපේ රටට ගැලපෙන්නේ නිකම් රට කන්න නැතුව මේක බටහිරවාදී වෙන්න ඕනේ. So that is what because the post was about creating a safe environment for women in the night in public transport basically, and this was one of the comments which stood out because it shows how they think, the attitudes and the mindsets. Then we have this law, which is an ancient law. I think in the 1840s, it was brought in the 1840s, and it propagates exactly what he's saying. So Ramani, can I have your views on this matter and what is being done with laws?
So this is a complex situation. Now, this the Vagrancy Ordinance, which permits the police to take in women who are walking on the street without a purpose, or interpreted as walking in the streets for commercial sex work, and they're taken to court and fined on pleading guilty. And in the commercial sex trade, this is quite common. And the women will plead guilty, pay the fine, or it's paid by someone else, and then they go back to the trade. So that's a bigger issue in the sense of the perception of these things. So the fact that it's Western, that women can walk in the night, work in the night, that it's Western. And also the many of the issues that all the other panelists brought up of the idea that there are certain rules within Sri Lanka that should apply to women to make them probably pure and wholesome, which are not the rules that are followed in the West. These are the biases, misconceptions that we have among the public. So there are two things on this. The general common citizen has these issues because we don't address them in education. There isn't enough conversation to strategically and scientifically break these arguments. I mean, it's happening. It's much better than when we were young 30 years ago. It's getting there. But still, ordinary citizens do have these views, and that's why women are prevented from working in the night or getting into certain professions or working at all in many places. What's debilitating is when leaders say the same things. So the ambassador's comment at the UN that international commitments should be according to domestic compulsions is a mere reflection of these common attitudes we have. And it is not just, it's not about violence against women, I think. I don't think he said it from that kind of perspective of justifying violence. It is from a place of not placing enough importance to understand what you're saying. Because if you look at a leader, you know that an international human right is a human right anywhere, everywhere, for everybody. There are no halfways, quarterways of accepting a right. You are governed by rights that are globally applicable to all human beings. I mean, we don't make those distinctions when it comes to child rights, but we always make those distinctions when it comes to women's rights. So when we don't understand the implications of rights on women's equality, freedom, right of choice, right of voice, then all these biases come out. And we say these things in the guise of culture or protection, and then it gets into our discourse. And obviously at the highest level of policy making, of decision making, of highest voice. So that is the problem we have. Ordinary citizens will always have these biased views in the best of countries, best of citizens. And we can challenge those, taking a long time through media, to consensus building, to opinion making. But when it's justified by leaders, by professionals who just subscribe to these very common ideas, which are discriminatory and almost violating of women's equality and rights, then it becomes more and more ingrained in society, and it gets harder and harder to challenge that. So that is the problem we have. And after so many years, like Savi says, of working on these issues, to have someone of such great esteem say something like that, that we will subscribe to international obligations based on what is suitable for us, it's frightening. So there was a time that we were wondering that this statement was that we would domestically make sure that we go over and beyond the rights that are internationally accepted. But I somehow don't think that was the case. So we will use culture, protectionism to control women and have power over women. And that is not acceptable, because women are, our constitution believes that women are as equal as men. So equality is fundamental and every right.
Laila, you're muted.
I know it keeps getting muted, right? So Ramani, anyway, believing that women are equal to men in this country is only theoretical, right? That is about as far as it goes in reality, right? I'll just tell you something very quickly that happened personally to me, right? In my old age, right? About 2 weeks ago, I'm walking back home after taking my dog to the vet, right? On the main road, it must have been 8:30 in the night, not very late, right? Fully lit main road. I walk back, and this white van comes across, opens the door, and tries to force me into it, right? And literally that happened to me. And okay, long story short, I think that they didn't count on my loud voice and being so unafraid. I told them in a few choice words what I thought of them, and they took off, right? However, now here's the crux. The next day, when I met a lot of people I knew, including very, very, worldly men, one of them actually asked me, "So what were you wearing?" Right? Literally. And it just shocked me to my core. Someone I know very well, very nice person, he thought perhaps I asked for it. Were you wearing a skirt as short as this? You see? So it is, you feel that women don't have a chance. If that is happening, and you cannot, and that is true bias, right? A woman cannot walk on the road at 8:30 in the night, going 10 yards down the road to the vet, nothing else, right? No woman is going to ride up to a man and open the door and force him in. That's not going to happen. But it was their right, literally nagging, it was appalling. But it's what we have to put up. And what do you do with that? But it was not in a presence of mind to take the number down. You can't go to the cops and say, "What? Some van stopped by me," right? But the attitude of what was said afterwards actually shocked me more than the incident itself. So it's what you put up with. We are working women, we are, little more able to take care of ourselves, and we have to put up with this nonsense. Imagine what it is for, someone who's a little meeker and milder and has to come back from the factory and get down from a bus and walk. What on earth is she going to do?
That's just sad, Laila. Like you say, to have people who you think are respectable, nice people who work with you, who know you, to comment on, and to ask you what were you wearing. That is the bias we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we? And also, Laila, I want to bring this up because you are into advertising and you deal with media. Now, on several occasions, WIN has worked with certain funders, and we've done the number of media campaigns. And some of the videos you all did for us, grants did for us, have been so emotionally, it really hits you. It shows exactly what a woman is going through. Not only in Sri Lanka, I think all over, where she is subject to domestic violence and she has no support whatsoever. So when you send this video to, whatever the channel, they said these are beautiful, these are really, really good ads. But then we are paying in millions to have them published, right? And these are basically public service messages that should be done free of charge to help your society, your community, your children. But that doesn't happen.
No, Mariam, that is not absolutely true. We have managed to get, there are some responsible stations, and we have managed to get free airtime from time to time. We have managed.
That's great.
Of course, it might call for me speaking personally from a head of station to, myself. But I do, there are people, to be fair, they are. Yeah,
so because we have had that experience and people do approach us after seeing those ads, they say, Madam, why don't you, advertise with us?
I mean, I
Because
have created most of them after speaking to you all and getting your cases, and most of it is based on a real case. So yeah, but no, I have to say I have managed to speak to stations and get free airtime. It has happened.
that's great. And also, Laila, can you tell us a bit about how advertising or how media has shaped our thoughts and how it can help us progress and challenge these norms?
Well, media has a massive role to play in this whole thing, right? But what does media do across? I mean, I'm working in communication and media my entire life, right? What do? They often depict the socially endorsed view of a woman, right? That is what is done. I mean, brands, and brands are also to blame, right? Brands are so inextricably linked to culture. They can make a huge change if they want to, but they're too cautious. They can make a cultural shift, and some of them do try, but absolutely not enough. Now, for example, when I'm shooting a commercial, right, this has happened so many times. It's not in the script, it's not a part of it, but right in the background, the director will decide on his own to show the husband sitting down, lord and master, with newspaper open, and the woman subserviently is serving him a cup of tea. Nothing wrong in serving your husband a cup of tea. I have done that, right? That's not what I'm saying at all. But that is what we depict. Woe betide we want to show the husband serve the wife a cup of tea. That ain't going to happen, right? So that is and when I ask him, first of all, it's not on my script. What are you doing, right? He says, no, but it's a lovely touch. Yeah. So, and a friend of mine actually who works with me did some research on this lately, and he's written a paper about it. It's very much there. The media has it would be so wonderful if they really took this up. Not only the media, I actually say all brands. People really believe in strong local brands. Why can't they not champion a change in culture? Why can't they do that? Right? But no, they're afraid. They're afraid of the repercussion because we are so male dominated. That is very sad. It's actually quite sad.
How do you think we can move forward? I would like this is a question to everyone, Ramani, Peshi, and Savi. How do we move forward? I know we have to challenge this. We have challenged, Savi and I. We work together, Ramani. We have been challenging everyone. We work with the police. We work with all stakeholders. We work with policymakers. But how do we make this shift of the biases that we have? That you have to make your cup of tea for the husband, and that is all fine. Like Laila says, it's absolutely fine. But you depict a woman in this particular stereotypical way. And also, it's a heavy burden, I think, on the husband. When you say the woman has to be home looking after the wife and woman has to be home looking after her children. Husband has to bring in the money. He has to bring in. So it's a heavy burden on the husband as well. So how do we bring this change that we want to see in society, in policymakers? What do we have to do? Savi?
I think we need some good role models. We need some important men to carry this message of being, I don't know what the word is, to take the message that being abusive because of gender bias or because of discriminatory practices is not the fashion, not the in thing. It's not the fad. When a woman goes to the police station after she's subject to domestic violence, if she's bad, she goes to make an entry. So the police will say, no, it's okay, you go back. That's okay, now this is only the second time he hit you, so you go back. But if a man goes to the police station and says the next door neighbor hit him, what will the police do? He's going to take the inquiry, write the inquiry, call the neighbor, have an inquiry, arrest him or remand him or. Why is there a discriminatory practice or a gender bias attitude only when a woman goes to say about her abuse. We have to look at that. Now, it is when somebody has cut your finger off or thrown some acid on you, it is a criminal offense, no, Ramani? So it is, but nobody takes, there is no action taken on the perpetrator because it's simply because it's in the domestic sphere. So there are two ways of thinking. If it's something to do with a woman and her life and her abuse or her violation of rights, it's a different attitude. So that itself is a huge, huge gender bias attitude. But if somebody else, anybody else goes and makes an entry to the police station that somebody hit him or whatever, they will take action against the perpetrator. So that is one thing. And that is one thing we really need to look at in the coming months or whatever. And so we need to create that awareness. We need to take it up with the law enforcement authorities, create awareness. That's a whole long story. But also we need some strong role model men, sportsmen, politicians. There are men who are sensitive to this issue and who media people who can make a difference. In some way, somebody is writing a teledrama script, somebody is making a movie, somebody is doing a talk show. I think we can, if we can tell them, this is a simple message you have to bring out. It's a simple message. Just treating women equally. We are not asking for the world. We are asking equality in treatment and security. It's a protection thing. So this is not a big thing. I mean, people hide behind this facade of culture. I think when they're batterers half the time. Because actually, if you have nothing to hide, there's no fear in it. I mean, anyway, Sri Lankan women have a South Asian attitude of they will do anything for the family and the husband, anything. So there is no fear of them being very independent, strong, empowering, crushing, battering. So we only need that space.
Yeah. Sabi, you know, I think that you're 100% right in everything you said, but I think we need to move into the schools, right?
Yes, yes.
This has to be instilled into boys, particularly from a very young age.
Yeah,
By
true,
the
true.
time they become these big men, it's a little too late for them. They might agree with you and be our model and do all of the thing, but it's already in,
Yes, true,
right?
true.
Respect and equality has to be ingrained into girls and boys and everybody at a junior level. You know, it's like we talked about this, the same thing with domestic violence, that we should go talk to the schools and make sure, you know, that boys in particular are taught that women are to be respected, they're to be loved, they're your equal. And I feel that one way is if you start young. Otherwise, it's a little too late. In our
Actually, Laila, I'm glad you brought that up when you said schools. At
Yeah.
WIN, we see this, the age. Now, earlier women were subject to violence, maybe 18, 19, maybe 16 rape. But now, with cyber violence and cyber
Yes,
bullying, the
yes,
age has
yes.
come down to 13, 14. So
Right.
we really
Right.
need to look at schools because
100%.
cyber
100%.
is a terrible thing. It's a new form of violence. Nobody knows how to handle it. Police also just still learning. Schools don't know how to handle it. Children don't know how to handle it. I mean,
I
it's a
mean,
huge.
cyber is only going to get worse. If it is
That's the thing.
immediately, I mean, the amount of revenge porn that is going around,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
All the incriminating videos that I personally seen, some they are horrifying. You know,
Yeah,
last I read about some case in Putlam where there are neighbors, right, who are sending recorded messages to a husband as to where their wife's whereabout. You know how poor and how shabby is that? You know, husbands are sending their ex-wives threatening messages on WhatsApp. Now, new
yeah.
mediums have opened up for bias and harassment, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Hopefully, it'll get better.
No, we have got so many cases already at WIN, and we are trying to. We have just finished research which we have to launch, but we can see the numbers are increasing and the girls have got younger.
So why is it, Savi, that we cannot set up a support line for these girls? Right? I mean, those are things that are within our purview. No, we can do
So
something.
we have hotlines. We get a lot of
We
calls.
do.
Mariam might be doing the numbers, and we get quite a number. I think last week also we had 2 or 3. I don't do counseling so much, but Mariam.
Yes, yes, Ansari. So we do have a normal hotline, Laila, 07756765555. So all, I mean, we accommodate calls from anyone and everyone. It's handled by the counselor. So the issue with cyber harassment is that, and I think uh, perpetrators know this very well, that at the click of a button, you have destroyed this woman's life, right? And I think last week there was a reported suicide of a girl from Nigambo. That was very, very sad. So her abuser had been a 56-year-old man, if I'm not mistaken, and he had been threatening her with images and videos because she had wanted to break up. And she thought the only way out was to kill herself. And this is just one such incident, the most recent. And this is happening all over on every single platform, on WhatsApp groups, on Viber. Sometimes you can't even trace now when it's on when there is end-to-end encryption of messages. You can't even trace where the message is originating, where the image is originating. You can't even stop it. Whereas if it's on a website, you can block it, you can take it down. But when it starts circulating on WhatsApp, you can't. So technology has only made it difficult again for women and girls. Not that men are not subject to abuse, but it's always the woman and the girl, because I think again it's the social stigma. Because if a woman is naked, if she is involved in intimacy with a man, that is, whether it's right or wrong, you are labeled either prostitute, a slut, a whore. So that alone, uh, your life is destroyed, your reputation, your life. So you can go to the police, you can, they will all try to help you, but are you willing to take it to court? So because we don't have the privacy, we don't have the privacy of a courtroom. It's not a private hearing. So, or even the justice sector has a huge role to play. Ramani, this is, I think, what you mentioned. It's not, we have certain laws that can protect you, but whether the processes are in place, whether the system is in place, whether they are all willing to support you, is another question. Ramani, with cyber, I would also like to just bring this question up on marital rape. I know that rape alone is hardly being, the legal system doesn't support rape victims. But I also know that with women who come to WIN, that 75% of them are subject to rape within the marriage. And I know in Sri Lanka, South Asian culture is that we also live by that old, the British law, uh, where marriage is a license for anything and everything. And it is not an offense to be raped by your spouse. Would you like to comment on that, Ramani, please?
Yeah, thanks, Mariam. So, marital rape, the fact that we don't recognize marital rape as a crime is also a terrible perpetuation of gender biases behind the tag of cultural. So it does happen. The cases that come to WIN, I know we look at the types of violence, and invariably there is sexual violence, rape in the marriage. So it is talked about quite a lot now that rape does happen within the marriage. But are we speaking about it enough to bring a legislative change? We are not. Because we hide behind this whole thing that Sri Lanka is very respectful about the institution of marriage, and everything that happens within the marriage is kept within the marriage, and in no way is there rape within the marriage. Because one, like you said, it's accepted that when you get married, you give a free license to have sex. That's one. Other thing is a complete lack of acceptance that a husband can violate a wife to that extent. So we hide behind this thing that marriage is sacred, marriage should not be violated, people should stay together at all cost. So it's easier to ignore that rape happens within the marriage, although you speak to so many women and they talk about this a lot. It's easier to ignore it than to confront it, because we feel that if we confront it, we are actually questioning the institution of marriage and questioning how pure and wonderful it is in this country. But we don't look beyond, and I always say that it's because we don't look enough or learn enough. Any country which has legalized marital rape still believes in the sanctity of marriage. Their marriage is held as wonderful and virtuous and a haven for most people. Just because the law recognizes that there can be rape within the marriage has not meant that those countries are saying marriage is just a simple thing, let's look at all forms of violence within marriage and marriage can be disposed of it easily. It's not. So I go back to the issue that we don't spend enough time trying to understand these issues from a woman's perspective. And that's why it gets easy to couch it within culture and good behavior and sometimes even protectionism. And to go back to what Savi and Laila said about how do we make a change, and I completely agree with all of you that education is where you start. And you have to address the institutions. And Mariam, like you said, the justice sector, the medical sector has internalized it quite well, actually, in Sri Lanka. But you have to address the formal institutions, formal learning, formal courses of study in universities and all. I also think looking at the culture, the social media, how media has a wonderful role to play in changing attitudes and perceptions, I think making standing up for women's rights hip and fashionable is also very important. Like it has to be this thing that, like when Kumar Sangakkara speaks about being respectful to women, hordes of young men would say, fine, if Kumar Sangakkara can be good to his wife and speak about women's equality, there must be something in it. So I think there's still space to make that conversation very hip and very, that it's you're someone special if you're speaking. Because if you look at percentages, there aren't huge percentages of men who violate women, but the percentages are quite high of women who just go along with all the discriminatory attitudes, the words, the behaviors, and very few men would stand up in public. I mean, they would treat their wives very well, they would treat their daughters very well, they would treat their co-workers, female co-workers very well. But would they take a stand publicly on social media, on a platform, in a boardroom? Very few people would do that. So if we make it really hip for people to talk about, especially like Savi says, men, that's a masculine thing to talk about equality for women, I think we can actually create a sensational change in attitudes.
Thanks, Ramani. So we have a question. Pesh, I would like you to just answer this. We often talk about gender biases against women. Should we talk about how the same biases and stereotypes affect men or other genders? And will it help get more people interested enough to start breaking them down?
I would say yes, and let me say why. I want to just go back to addressing like having role models, being able to talk about what is in a cultural context, because now we are asking our children to become independent, right? We have influences from the West, right? So the culture within Sri Lanka has changed, right? So I think if we I have heard many times, if I take work experiences I've had, men who would call and say, why are you not also looking at, even it is minimal, issues that we face, right? So part of it is, if we open this up as a discussion on all, gay and lesbian issues, women, men, I think there would be recognition that this is important irrespective of gender. Now, that doesn't minimize that we not talk about women and the biases against women, but I think we become more inclusive, right? So if you take an example of why would a woman on their first date go and take these explicit photographs, and then they know very well, or they have heard that that could be publicized on Facebook, right? Why? They feel that to be accepted, they need to do that. For love, they feel like they need to do that. To gain trust, they feel like psychologically, they feel that that is the way. If not, oh gosh, I won't be able to be with this person. So lots of these issues, even if men are educated, right? If we address men's issues, I think they will be more inclined to work with us to see how they can support in women's issues. I want to take another example from work. So combating, let's say, domestic violence or working around that, we also have started looking at how we can get men involved, for men to understand what that means, right? How younger children can be involved in understanding what that is. So then they themselves don't become the abusers. And as we know, children who witness this can become abusive themselves, especially boys, right? It's a learned behavior. And boys think that it is okay because my mother has not gone anywhere, and I can also I grow up and I can beat my spouse, right? So that education has to happen, but at the same time, I hear day in day out in counseling and in other areas that it could be more inclusive. So to answer your question, I think it doesn't hurt to be. I also want to say, I think the others were talking about communication, right? How do we the women and men how to communicate what's not right, how to communicate the strengths they have? It doesn't have to be equal, like 50-50, right? A man may have some strengths and capabilities within a marriage, within a household, and women too. So how do we ingrain those kinds of behavior? And that can happen at school, that can happen in premarital counseling, right? I think premarital counseling is really great. I think it's a man actually who brought it to my attention within my work setting and said, why don't we start premarital counseling? I will give you a list of people who take vacation to go get married, right? You get some people, and I thought brilliant, and it came from one of the guys at work, a senior executive, a fairly highly senior leader. So I thought, well, that was fantastic. So we want to encourage, I think Savi was saying mentors, people or role models of people who will come forward, and he didn't think twice to come and talk to me about that, right? Whereas others might, may not even if they think, they may not come and tell me about that. Right? So I think inclusion will open more doors for such conversation.
Thank you, Peshi. Laila, would you like to comment?
No, I don't think I have too much to add on this subject. I'm 100% in agreement. I mean, you see, anyway, personally, I'm not your burn your bra kind of feminist. It's not like that. I mean, men have their own needs, they have their own rights, and I know there are some men who are beaten up by their wives also, right? We need, they should be given an equal chance, and I think that's absolutely fair. Absolutely.
Yes, so women in need win. We also believe in we're not asking for anything special. As women, we're not asking for anything that others don't have. So we are all looking for an equal playing field where all are treated equally with equal respect and mutual respect. So which is very, very important for all human beings. You respect life for life. Respect someone for being a person, not being a specific gender. Actions at work should be on merit, on the capabilities of the person, and not on gender. So what we have realized is that for a woman, every day is a challenge until you reach the top, maybe like Laila or like Savi, where we have fought our way through. But otherwise, you walk on the street and it's a challenge. You can't walk. Your cat call, you're called into vehicles. That is such a challenge. And despite of what dress you wear, the fact that you're a woman and you're walking on the street opens up, men think they're entitled to belittle you. So we all need to change that. And women in India is doing their part, and I think it would be great if media can do their part. And so I think this discussion was actually very good. We see that in all sectors there are pluses and minuses. There are men who do support you, who advocate for women's rights and equality, but at the same time there are those who have the primitive way of thinking. And I think this statement that was made at the UN was also quite primitive. Whereas I would think that if he was to make a statement, you'd say, yes, though culturally we are all different, we still uphold women's rights as human rights. That should have been the message that went out to the global community, but what was said was something else. So any closing remarks from all of you? I'd really appreciate. Ansavi, Ramani, anyone?
Mariam, can I just add one more thing that I
Yes.
have seen? Really sorry, I think it might be important. I think what another thing that needs to happen is education on the spectrum of um, violence or gender-based violence. What I have found, people seem genuine when they come and tell me, "Oh, is that also a part?"
It's frozen. I think she has fallen off.
Yeah, we just lost some connection.
So maybe I will just talk till then. Are we done? Are we like almost done? Is that why you're saying?
Yes, almost done. Because
okay, so then in that case, I will just take this one thing up because we didn't come to bias in the workplace, which is what
please go ahead.
So let me tell you about now. I mean, I am very fortunate. I have to say, maybe I'm one in a million. I have had no bias at all from the day I joined the workforce till now. I had nobody. Maybe I'm a big mouth, and that's why that happens. But I have not had any problems, right? However, it hugely exists. And the strange thing is it exists in places that we don't imagine. For instance, I mean, let anybody think about the interview of a woman. When a woman is being interviewed for a job, well, possibly you won't get past the third question when she's asked, do you have children? Right? Next question, if she is not married or she's getting married, then she is asked, do you plan to have children? Right? Now that's almost illegal in some countries, right? And now when you know that, okay, she says, poor thing, innocently says, yes, I do plan. So what does the employer immediately think? Okay, now I have to plan for maternity leave, and 99 out of 10, she's not going to get that job, right? I mean, nobody asks a man, do you have children or do you plan to have children? No. I mean, that is, you'll never think that that is bias, right? You'll think that bias is pay discrimination or, fighting for a title. Okay, those are the obvious ones, but there are little things like this. Then there's positional bias, right? Now, who said it? Is society who has said that women have to be secretaries and receptionists. Why, right? Why are they pegged? Why are they pegged there? So there are some in the workforce, there are little things, not the very obvious ones, right? Starting from the interview that you come for a job in which you face bias, right? Are we telling women that they shouldn't be mothers, right? And because so if they have, so we will not give them a job because 6 months down the line they'll go on maternity leave. That happens all the time, right? And we should be, and women are doing that sometimes. That is even worse. I have heard women ask that question. Appalling, right? Honestly. So, there is a lot of bias, but I think the workplace bias is a little bit less, thank God, right? Then it was about very little, but like, Peshali said, even a baby step, even a tiny step forward is a step forward, right? So you do see, because there are very strong women. I spoke last year on a Women in Business forum, right? And there were so many women on boards now, unlike say 10 years ago. So there seems to be, I think women are stronger, women are more educated, and they themselves are taking the step forward. Having said that, sexual harassment in a corporate world, there's nothing to talk about. It's just disgusting, right? Recently I know of a case, The man, very, very high up, I'm sure everybody knows him, but didn't even get a rap on his knuckles. Nothing. Girl lost her job. Girl was on the verge of suicide. Right? So that's what happens. The man didn't get a rap on his knuckles. I don't know if he even got a letter in his file. Certainly he didn't lose his job for severe harassment. It does happen, and I mean, it's not that it only happens in our country, but of course we are concerned about where we are. But it takes a village, for anything. So I think even if a group of strong women actually get together, and form some kind of body. I am very happy, Mariam, for this kind of forum, because actually you at least get to air your views. And I'm a huge non-fan of these armchair warriors on WhatsApp and Facebook who say, oh, how sad. Actually, that gets on my nerves more than anything. Or when they see these puppies who are abandoned, they say, how cute, I hope someone takes them. Why don't you? That nothing annoys me more than these silly comments like how sad, and I hope somebody does something about it. I think we all need to know that it's each one's responsibility to step out and do something.
I think, Laila, I want to just say there are some organizations now who are very seriously looking into sexual harassment issues, policy, and I really want to add that where I work, it's taken at a leadership level very seriously. We have created an in-house counseling function to support because we are 80% working force is women, right? So we have over 30 counselors in the 3 global locations addressing domestic violence, sexual harassment, all these issues confidentially. So I think I want to urge other organizations to partner and look at it. I mean, even having myself as a part of the organization and being internal, what is the beauty of it is that the women who work in the at the machines don't have to go away when they have their household work or children or their own self-care to leave and go meet someone, right? Because the service is within the organization, right? So they can get up, and we have made way that they can come and speak to us confidentially. Now, the latest breakthrough, you may have already heard, is Unilever has passed a global policy on domestic violence. It is available to everybody to view. They are giving 10 days of paid vacation called safe leave, okay, on top of your regular leave. And you don't have to apply for them. It's between the supervisor and yourself, right? It's confidential and it is published so anyone can use this policy and implement it. Now, the same 10-day leave was given in New Zealand a few years back by Jayasundera for domestic violence issues, right? I mean, this Unilever thing is a breakthrough. It is really remarkable, and you can ask for flexible work hours, you can ask for transfers, but the safe leave of 10 days to go to police, go to hospital, to take care of things, because a woman would not take their annual leave or whatever, because that usually are kept and are supposed to be kept to attend to your other activities that, maybe a child's school rehearsal or whatever, right? So I think, I don't know, I commend Unilever, and I hope more and more people, expertise in various multidisciplinary approaches will come together, and these dialogues hopefully will elicit the need for that, right? So,
That's fantastic.
so I think, yeah.
It's fantastic to hear that. I work with Unilever. Also, Unilever is a very progressive organization. They do many things, as is your organization. You don't get many places like that over here. And I really hope that if at least two organizations decide to do something like this, our time has been well spent. It'd be great. But yeah. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, Savi and Mariam. This is a great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting, and it has been a great conversation and dialogue. It's wonderful.
Maria, one more thing. I think Laila, shall we have a goal?
Yes, fantastic. I mean, then this is fully worthwhile.
Yeah. So I think we need to look at the media.
Yeah.
Media, publicity, TV, people, everybody let's the people who are sitting in this panel today, can we meet and brainstorm as to what the next step should be?
Very happy to work with you on that.
Yeah, so I think we need to do a small campaign. I mean,
Sure.
as a social service
Absolutely.
message on TV, at least the main 2 or 3 TV channels where they can every day for 6 months at least have a message on violence against women or gender-based violence and gender biases. Some message every day, just before news and just after news or some peak hour. So we should try to work on that, Laila.
I'm with you 100%. And like Kim was saying, I mean, I will personally speak with them and get them. We don't, they might not give full 6 months, but they certainly give us a large dose.
Yeah, so because every day if you give a message for at least 3-4 months, like
not only television, you know, on drive time radio is a very strong time to hear messages.
Yeah. So radio, so we look at it, we'll chat.
Sure, certainly. Wonderful.
Yeah,
I mean, this is what you need. You need, you know, these not to remain as discussions. You needs to be progressive, where we can take it step forward, you know, and make it, if you like, you know, Savi, we said this before once. We in one woman's life, this has been worthwhile.
Yeah. No. I mean, we have saved women's lives and we are happy, but we need to look at the bigger picture. And I think because the media plays a huge role,
massive role.
So let's sit and brainstorm.
Let's do that.